Located in Foria Village, Aliba Parish, Rhigbo Sub-County in Madi-Okollo District, is Aliba Parents Nursery and Primary School established by the community in 2014. Because of the evident commitments from the school staff, many parents from distant places have sent their children to learn here. Some children move about 10 kilometers to the school every day, most especially those from neighboring parishes of Odoi, Luba and Kwili, including some from distant villages of Aliba Parish. To an education lover like Eric Piasa, the director of Right to Be Free, a non-governmental organization in Ghana and USA, who visited the school in late April, sacrifices by parents to send their children through such distances shows how serious they love education.
From about 11 communities, and some of them walk about 10 to 15 kilometers to come to school, it's a sign that people are eager to learn. Some of them can even pay as much as 8,000 a day, on 8,000 shillings a day, on a motorbike to bring their children to school. We don't have, but they manage to make sure they sustain it. So to me, the interest and the zeal is there.
In front of you, the staff fast is coming to ask for you a drama stamps.
Since its inception with a nursery section and now up to primary 6 level, the school has moved strides through challenges of inadequate classrooms and feeding amidst the ever-increasing enrollment. Thanks to partners like Lean On Me Foundation, LOMEF, that intervened in 2017 to construct a 3-classroom block in the school that is currently accommodating 562 learners.
Right now, we do not have enough classrooms. And even in the SMC I have discussed, and I brought to the PTA to be ready. Anytime I ask them to come to the school to put up a classroom, they should be ready.
The classrooms we're having on the ground are not enough. One of the class is sitting under a temporary structure, which is a baby class. And in the baby class alone, we have a total of 204 pupils. And all that number cannot be accommodated in a room. And then the second challenge we are faced with is inadequate sanitary facilities. I mean things like latrine.
Fluctuations in prices of food items affect the food supply for the children, especially when the commodity prices rise in the market. Being in rural setup at the shore of River Nile, parents pay 30,000 and 50,000 shillings for primary and nursery sections respectively, and how to manage this amount of money to feed 562 children in 3 months is another economic question to ask.
This school is not having its own farm. They are buying things from outside. Now, if the prices keeps on changing or keeps on rising, it normally affects the school.
To that effect, community of Aliba Parents Nursery and Primary School have been guided to utilize the available 9.5 hectares of the school land for farming in order to supplement and sustain the school feeding program for learners. With the hashtag Operation Feed Yourself, Piasa believes that parents can offer their labor and grow food for the school.
You are doing very well in this community. Let's clap for parents for this community. Let's clap for the parents. Hey, clap for your parents. When I see what you've done here, I'm so proud. We want to ask for more from you. We want you to help us as a school to start a school farm. My trip to Arua is because a friend of mine called Tony, who happened to be a sponsor of a school in Aliba. We met in the US in December, and we were talking about the project he's running here, the school project. So he told me that I should come. We had a discussion, and we agreed that we should come and help to see how we can bring sustainability in the program. You know, every donor's desire is that when he starts a project in some way, the project should be able to sustain itself after some time. So we are looking at what can we do as a people, as a team, to make sure that the Aliba school project becomes self-sustainable. They have a big land, about 9.5 acres. And about some of them, about 6 of them, hectares, are lying down without doing nothing. So and they do what they call school feeding for the children, which costs them a lot. And one of the things they eat a lot is maize and cassava. So if the school is helped to work on their land by getting a tractor to come and work on the land for them, that land can be used to cultivate maize and cassava. So after 1 year, they'll have their own maize, which will now help them to supply, to feed the children without going to buy. So that money for the maize and cassava they buy every term will be turned into something else that can help them sustain the school. I think the parents are agreed, they are willing to help the school to do that. Another thing that we are thinking of is also looking at the issue of fish pond. You can do fish cage in the Nile.
Many parents who do not have money pay school fees in kind by bringing food items. Mr. Eric Piasa attributes these challenges to poverty that community in the area experiences. In order to also empower parents economically, an option of loaning goat rearing and fish caging in River Nile acts as an option to improve capabilities of parents to pay their children's school fees.
One that impressed me is about one parent I spoke to who said that she has to go and gather firewood to sell or to bring to the school as a means of paying school fees. One man told me he has to go and look for some things like cassava to bring to the school as a form of payment of school fees. And to me, this better way of working or taking care of their children is a good thing. On the flip side of things, one thing I see is that poverty level in the community is very high. And parents, though they are willing to help in these all areas, some of them don't have alternatives. And some of them still owe a lot of school fees. So for the school to be able to become self-sufficient, to sustain themselves, there's a need for the school to have what you call the parents to be helped to start something doing. We came up with some projects that we think it will help. One is the goat project. So we came to a point that if we get a child, especially starting from the needy child, who are very poor, who are struggling, one goat, a female goat, and then they take care of the goat. At least at the end of the year, the goat might produce minimum of maybe 2. So when your goat produces 2, then you give 1 back to the school, and the school gives the goat to another parent who is also struggling. Beside that one, I also observed that there are a lot of orphans, about 150 orphans. So I'm going to try and look for sponsors who can support the vulnerable orphans, at least with some token, a term or a month or something that can help them to go to school.
Parents confessed that mentorship by Eric Piasa is what they have been lacking and demand for more guidance from him, adding that the loan they get will help in paying their children's school fees.
After the Fagues, Manvana Musuva Maza, Cosoya, the service after the phone, land the bar, Mova Quazalaba, Tidin, the Fecasus, the Bertima, Daisy, Manasene, school fees and of a
Just like any African community in any country, the purpose of embracing education among the African children is with the aims of making the continent a better place for every human inhabitant in it.
The leader of Pan-Africanism in Africa is called Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. He made a statement from Ghana that the independence of Ghana is meaningless unless it is linked to the total liberation of Africa. So it means that if we alone prosper in one aspect and the whole Africa is in the dark, it will affect all of us. So therefore, my desire is that every child, every community in Africa should have at least access to basic education. And 2, my desire is that if people need help, it can be pushed to help. Look, I tell the community that my mother sold her cloth to pay my school fees. But now she has more than necessary clothes she doesn't need. Why? So if you find a child at a particular point who is in difficult, whether it's in Africa or Congo or Kenya or Uganda or Ghana, and you can support, push that child. For one day, you never know.
Akuma Moses Odim's project officer of the school explains how the journey to lobbying for the school started until its current state.
So I came across a young man called Kizito. There was a youth association that those of Kizito had started here. And then, of course, along the way, when Kizito got his spouse, and when they did their wedding here in Arua, and then, of course, ended up visiting the village, the community here made a request to them. They asked that is it possible that in this relationship they can move out wherever they are going, solicit support to really establish a learning center here. And that's actually how the idea was conceived. So it was a community idea. And based on the community idea, the communities then volunteered and started a papyrus structure. And when they did that, Kizito and his colleagues, those of Laliga Francis and those of Asele Benjamin, they captured this story, and then of course in pictures, and they went with this story to German. And so Kizito and the spouse started the mobilization of resources to see how this can be supported. But of course along the way, in the background, I wasn't. So by the time I joined when LOMEF, which has sent Eric to visit today, was now constructing this particular building, which is just right behind me.
Akuma says due to donor fatigue, the capacity to support will reduce, and hence the need for self-sustainability of the school.
And so the question of sustainability to us is core. And why it is core is because there's what we call donor fatigue. And when donors, and of course you know globally now, the crisis levels, refugees or humanitarian crises elsewhere are growing, and then of course climate change related migrations are happening. And so we might find that the capacity to support such institutions will be dwindled and then will be challenged. And so the sustainability component which we are thinking about is that, you know, a community school like this is influenced by one, the cultures of the people around it, the livelihood patterns, you know, and the styles of the community around such a school influences what happens in the school here. With working with Abizadi, the school farm, where there can be multiplication, community multiplication of goats with the hybrid nature of goat, especially the Mubende species goat.
According to Akuma, there is no plan to hand over the school to the government based on the past experiences of how stagnant a community school becomes after being taken over by the government.
In our society today, in our country today, we don't have really very many community schools. What actually happens is that communities start schools, and when they start schools, they hand over the schools to the government. But there is something which actually those institutions that are handed back to the government miss. The issue of ownership by the parents, and the partnership and the collaboration which the school system has to have with the community is lost along the way. Especially in the government-aided school, you don't tend to see parents' involvement and participation really very serious in the education of their children.
Ahad Safi in primary 5 and Afsa Farida in primary 6 are pupils who started their education in the temporary structures. They say the school has had a big difference in comparison with the past.
Previously, they built for us a classroom that was with the papyrus. Nowadays, we are now in a block in the one of the part. That time, the rain can disturb us a lot, but the blackboards were not here. When they started writing, the blackboard cannot bear enough. But nowadays, when they started writing, the blackboards are enough.
People are now studying good buildings, but long ago, here, when these buildings are not here, people used to study at times under that big tree, and others they build for them a classroom with the papyrus mat. Now next year P7s will be here, but their classroom is not there. So at least let them build new classes here.
The school has 17 teachers for both nursery and primary sections, with 6 more other non-teaching staffs like school bazaar, cooks and watchmen. Out of the enrollment of 562 pupils, 270 are boys and 292 are girls. Out of the enrollment of 562 pupils, 270 are boys and 292 are girls. Of these, 335 are in the nursery section and 227 are in the primary section.